We are glad that you're here this evening. How's everybody? Good night. Good evening. Let's start there. Good to see everybody. We hope that you're having had a good day. We'll make an announcement right quick. Yes, Suzanne's here. Thank you for all that you've done, for all the prayers and cards. She'll probably write a card. We were just talking about this yesterday. Good luck. You're right-handed. So if you get a card and you can't read it, it's because she dictated it and I wrote it. Okay? So, and that may be the way it is going to be. But anyway, the announcement is that we've enjoyed Jerry and Gail being with us for the last, I don't know, couple of years. And we're going to ship him up north for a couple of years and let him come back. But we look forward that we know that the church there will benefit greatly from his work. We hate that they're going, but we are thankful that we can share him for a little while. And I have, because of course lives right close, I have been able to ride with him to a lot of the preacher stuff, and that's just been valuable stuff for me. So I've enjoyed it, and look forward to him coming back in a couple of years. If they fire you before then, just come on back. We'll take you back. It'll be all right. Let's talk about story found in Matthew chapter 15. That's what we've been doing just this month, and we're going to pick up some character studies later on in the year. But we've been just concentrating in the month of Matthew on just some folks that they're not minor. I mean, you hate to say that about anybody, but the fact is they are just folks that are not, there's not a lot said about them in pages of the Bible, but there's something said. And what is said about them is valuable. And tonight we want to study this lady found in Matthew chapter 15. Before we get there, you have to think about it. We all appreciate compliments. Way to go. You did a good job. Fantastic. Wow. Couldn't have done it without you. Appreciate your help. Appreciate you. Those kind of compliments. We appreciate those things. We appreciate people saying those kind words to us when we do something or when something is accomplished. We appreciate good compliments, and good compliments are worth a lot, aren't they? They mean a lot. They make us go a whole lot further. Mark Twain said that he could go months on a good compliment. Such is true. We understand that compliments push us forward and help us do great things. And one of the things we find out in the Bible is that Jesus didn't give a whole lot of compliments. There's about 4 times, and if you look at it kind of sideways a little bit, you might say 6 times that Jesus gives compliments. He just didn't give a lot, or they're not recorded, one of the two. But one is found in Matthew, the 15th chapter. And it's an interesting story. It's a story of a lady, more than likely a Syrophoenician woman, a Gentile. Where she's come from, she is one that more than likely was an idolater or an idol worship. She was an individual that lived according to the course of the world. If she was truly an individual that followed as her people did. Now, she may not have, because one of the great things we find out about her is her faith is just astounding. But truth be known, as we'll see as we look through this evening, we all have faith. The question is, what's our faith in? I look at this story and I see not so much what her faith is in, but what she does with her faith. Because Jesus compliments her faith. Let's see the story. We began, first of all, with a request found in verses 22 following. Behold, a Canaanite woman from the region came out and was crying, "Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon." But he did not answer her a word. And his disciples came and begged him, saying, "Send her away, for she's crying out after us." There's a lot said in those verses. A lot said that we don't see. But when you look at it, you find out that this Canaanite woman comes to Jesus and says that she's crying. In other words, she's shouting out. She's letting it be known. She is, for those that are with Jesus, she is a nuisance. She's a nuisance because she's crying out, and she doesn't just cry out one time, have mercy upon me. She doesn't just say one time, well, have mercy upon me, O Lord, Son of David. She cries out. It's loud. Could be shrill, may not be shrill, but it's loud and it is continuous. But we also find out why she's crying. Why is she hollering at Jesus? My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon. See, she's probably heard the stories. She's probably heard what Jesus could do. She's probably heard the miracles that he's been able to perform. She's heard about this man and the teachings that he's done, and the fact that there have been some that have come, and man, they can walk now, they can see, they can hear, and it's amazing. And so she goes. She goes hollering. She goes crying out after him. But it's also interesting is how she addresses the Lord. O Lord, Son of David. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But she says, as it goes on in verse 23, but he did not answer a word. Strange, isn't it? You might say, well, he didn't hear her. Yeah, it seems like he did. You might say, well, Jesus was inattentive to her. No. You might say, well, it was because it was a woman, and culture from that standpoint at that time, culture, men and women didn't talk. Maybe it was the fact that she was a Canaanite, and he knew that. He wanted nothing to do with her. But maybe he's putting her to a test. Maybe he's seeing, if you will, what's going on with her. And so he doesn't say anything. And so his disciples said, can you get her out of here? Can you send her away? She's bothering us. She's bugging us. It seems as if maybe, and this is a Paul Daugherty assumption, but maybe they are afraid that she's calling undue attention to the Lord. Whatever the case may be, notice her request. It's about her daughter. My daughter is severely depressed with the demon. The conversation that ensues then, after Jesus first ignores her, he answered. He says, I was sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. She came, and she knelt before him, saying, Lord, help me. And he answered, not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. And she said, yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. Now there's a pull here, both ways, if you will. Jesus' answer in verse 24, I am sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I don't know if that was directed at her or not, or just said loud enough so that she would hear it. And it was directed towards those that were saying, let's get rid of her. Nevertheless, she did hear it. But the statement itself is interesting because you see, he's telling what his mission is. Well, we understand his mission. His mission was really told by the angel's visit to Joseph. He came to seek and to save that which was lost. But you see, he's dealing now with a Canaanite. And he says, I'm basically sent to the Israelites. I've been sent by God to the Israelites. And so as he says this, she kneels down. Verse 24 was directed at her or not. She's heard it. She knows what he says, and she knows and understands what it means. And so she kneels down. A sign of respect, a sign of reverence, possibly, a sign, though, that she understands, and she yet needs something. And so she begs again. This time, her request is simple. Lord, help me. Just help me. Jesus' answer, though, is not so much an answer as a statement. Some have even classified it, sadly so, as a condemnation. But look what Jesus said. It is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. Ooh. Wait a minute. My Jesus was compassionate. My Jesus was kind. My Jesus was loving. My Jesus was tender. And yet, it's comparing her to a dog. Now, let's understand something. Let's understand two or three different things. Let's understand, first of all, that first century, the larger dogs were scavengers. They were not the wonderful domesticated house dogs that many of us have today. They were not pets. They were basically animals that roamed the streets to get what they could get. But the word that's used here is more of little dogs that folks were more familiar with and more pet friendly, if you will. But his question, or his statement rather, I guess more of a statement than a question, it's not right to take what is really for the Jews and throw it in front of the dogs or in front of the Gentiles. Think about what Jesus has said. What he has said is really not as big an insult as we have tried to make it through the years, but it's not a compliment. But what does she say? Well, it's true what you say, Lord. But even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall under the table. Those of you that have dogs and have dogs in your house, do the dogs sit at the table and beg? Do they sit at the table waiting for something to fall off? I know Ethan, when we go visit, they have two in the house, and Ethan or Kara goes and puts them up before we eat because Graceland, food falls off. But her statement is this: Lord, don't we even deserve just a little bit? Don't we just deserve the excess, the little bit that falls off? Well, notice what happens then. It's a compliment. The compliment's given by Jesus. Jesus answered and said, "O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desire." And her daughter was healed instantly. Great is your faith. Now let us understand, as we've said a while ago, we all have faith. All of us do. Every person has faith. Now, we ask what you have faith in. Where is your faith? What is your faith placed in? Is your faith placed in things? Is your faith placed in people? Is your faith placed in God? Where's your faith placed? God even helps us out. The Greek word anthropos, that is translated man in the New Testament, literally means upward looking one. And when we go through history from a religious standpoint and study it, we find out that there have been the Greeks, the Romans, and of course many others that not only have had their idols, but they've had their deities, their gods. Why? Because there is belief that runs through man that there is a higher power. And we have to find out what that higher power is, and we have to direct that. And that's what I think is so great about this woman, because we ask the question, why is her faith great? Her faith is great, first of all, because it's informed. Do you remember the first statement she makes? What does she refer to Jesus as? Son of David. She didn't just come to know this. This wasn't just something that just popped in her head. First of all, it's a true statement, right? Go back and read the genealogy of Jesus, and one of the things you find out, yeah, she's right. It was something that was known. And Jesus made that reference, son of David. But she makes the reference. She knows a little bit about Jesus. How did she know? We don't know. How did she come to that knowledge? We don't know at all. Scriptures do not tell us. And so to assume would almost be to get a little far beyond Scriptures. But her faith is informed. She knows a little bit about Jesus. Paul asked the question in Romans chapter 10 and verse 14. How shall they call upon him whom they have believed? And how shall they believe without what? Preacher, teacher. And Jerry's used the last part of this verse for his barefoot running. How beautiful are the feet. By the way, his feet aren't beautiful. But how beautiful are the feet of those who bring glad tidings of peace. You see, faith needs to be informed. You and I, we have friends. And you might say, well, that's the first blessing, but yes. But hear me out. We have friends, but we live in the Bible Belt. But we have friends that have faith, but it's not directed in the right way. Paul would talk about in Romans chapter 10 that I bear them record that I have a zeal for God, but not according to knowledge. You might say, preacher, that's talking about zeal. It's not talking about being informed, and you're right. But understand that they had a zeal for God, but it didn't have a direction. It didn't have, some folks would call it a governor. It doesn't have a point or a place in which it's headed. Same's true of a lot of folks' faith. Yeah, faith, but it needs to be directed. This morning we looked at the book of 2 Kings. And we looked at Josiah, and we looked at the fact that when they found the law, as they were cleaning out the place of worship, when they found the law, they read it, they recognized it as authority, they repented of their sins, and they reformed their life. And then in chapter 22, according to the will of God, that's informed faith. That's faith that has learned the scriptures. Oh, yes, we know that from a child you've known the scriptures. Paul told Timothy. Is that possible? Yes. As Christians, though, we grow and learn in our faith. While the Hebrew writer talks about those who didn't grow, as he talks about the fact that they need a little meat, but they're not there. Peter would remind them, as newborn babes, were to desire the sincere milk of the word. Faith must be informed. That's why it's important that we study. That's why it's important that we get back to the scriptures. Why? Because knowledge is powerful. In the book of Proverbs, the 24th chapter, and verse 5, a wise man is strong, but man of knowledge increases strength. Knowledge is powerful. We sometimes don't think about that. And it seems as if our society wants to get dumber all the time. We have more access to more things, but we maybe just be pulled into many places. But we should never, as Christians, get away from the Bible. Isaiah said that my people, talking about Israel, my people are destroyed because of lack of knowledge. Faith needs to be informed. Faith must have a direction. In order for it to be considered great, this lady's faith was informed. Our faith should be informed. But then secondly, her faith is great because it was persistent. See, as we said, she didn't just call once and say, Jesus, son of David, have mercy upon me. My daughter, she's depressed. It wasn't just a one-time call out. You've seen, if not maybe even been in it, you've seen what the paparazzi does. You've seen on TV how that they constantly call. We watch sometimes even on the news that say the president, whomever that may be, the president going off to the helicopter or walking just through an area, and the number of people that are hollering at him, not so that he'll wave, but so that he'll answer a question. The insistent questions that are asked because we want to know. This lady is doing the same to Jesus. She is persistent. Her faith is persistent. But not only is it persistent in that she keeps asking, but think about the obstacles that Jesus put in front of her. I'm sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. In other words, what I have is really not for you. It's for these folks over here. And she doesn't stop. Even when he says, can I take what's food away from God's people and give it to the dogs or give it to the folks that are lesser? Can I do that? Doesn't stop her. You might say, well, first of all, preacher, a mother's love. You know how a mother becomes like a mother bear, and she protects her children, and she wants for her children, and she does anything and everything for her children. And yes, I get that. But she still is coming back at Jesus. How many of us, the first time when Jesus said what he said, if it had been us, would have walked away and said, try? How many of us would have said, he's just not going to do anything for us. I give up. Not this one. She keeps coming back, back, back. It reminds us, too, of our faith. How that our faith is to be persistent, that it's not to give up, that we, according to Titus chapter 1 and verse 9, to hold fast the faithful words, as Paul would tell Titus, as you've been taught. That we're to stand fast in the traditions, that we're to continue. Paul would write to the church of Colossae in Colossians chapter 1 and verse 23, that we're continuing in faith. Faith does not stop when obstacles rear their ugly heads. Life's not always easy, is it? Life has its road bumps, it has its obstacles, it has its detours. We can plan a particular plan of action. But that doesn't mean that we can carry it through. Why? Because something might happen. Have you ever planned to do something and then had to pivot? Because something came up. An illness maybe, a death in the family, hard times, difficulties arise. It happens. And it happens to all of us from time to time. Well, what do? Well, do we just sit down and stop? What about our faith? What do we do when hard times arise? Many are the stories that I can share with you, and I'm sure many are the stories you can share with me, of individuals that were walking with the Lord. And then something happened, some maybe thing that was unforeseen, or maybe it was seen, but it was just an obstacle that they just had to deal with it, they thought, on their own. And boy, there are challenges, aren't there? There's always challenges in life, money and marital and children and getting through life and physical ailments and sickness. There's all kinds of problems. I know of a young lady that had quit the church. She'd gone through some marital issues. She was away from home. She was trying to figure out. She kind of got married young, and she was trying to figure out exactly what she wanted to do. And she was trying to go back to school, college at the same time. And as she did, she was trying to figure everything out. And her father, who was a good friend of mine, approached her and said, "You need to be in church." Her promise was, "Daddy, I got to figure it out on my own. And once I figure it out on my own, then I'll come back." I don't know. Her father has since passed away. Her mother has passed away. And I don't know where she is. But I wonder, did she ever come back? Faith has the understanding that there are obstacles, but there's a God to help us through. There's a God that will carry us through. There's a God that will uphold us. There is a God that we can hold to, that becomes, as the psalmist says, our rock, our fortress, and our deliverer. Our God that will carry us through, but we must do what? That wonderful passage that you hear me say quite often. that we're kept by the power of God through faith. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 5. And it's the idea of, as long as I'm holding to the Lord, He's holding to me. Our faith must be persistent. It'll be challenged. It'll be put to the test. But if we're going to have great faith like this woman, we have to continue in faith. Grounded and settled. Be not moved. And thirdly, her faith was selfless. Why did she come? It was all about her daughter. Well, preacher, that makes sense, doesn't it? Those of us that have had children, yes, we would do anything for our children. But when you think about not just the fact that she is persistent and she's coming for her child, but think about what Jesus has said to her in front of people. And yet, she's like that old bulldozer. It didn't stop her. That mountain didn't just raise its head and she said, I quit. She was focused not upon herself, but others. And so her faith was selfless. She came for her daughter. She did not stop. She was true to what she believed and what she was hoping to gain from Jesus. Faith is selfless. Faith means that I think less of self and more of others. It's interesting to me in the Bible, the more I think about it, the more I study it recently, it's interesting to me that a church that had problems, the church at Philippi, a church that seemingly had some unity problems, that Paul would spend so much time in that very short book, not only talking about rejoicing and talking about here's why you don't need to be doing this, but we concentrate upon the idea of selflessness. Don't look upon your own things, but look upon the things of others. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit and lowliness of mind. Let each esteem other better than themselves. Let this mind be in you, which is also in Christ Jesus. Selflessness that Paul gives there to the church at Philippi. It's the same selflessness that we need in our faith. That it's not about us. It's really about the Lord. It's not about us, but it's about what we can do for others to help them in their running the Christian race. Those verses that are so common and so familiar to us, such as Matthew 16:24, to deny ourselves and take up our cross and follow Jesus. In Galatians 2, verse 20, where Paul says that he's crucified with Christ. The idea of I'm willing to give up myself for the good of others. That's something that's not heard a lot, and it's not heard by a lot of people, but it's the reality that the Lord teaches. The Lord teaches, do good for others. Don't think about yourself. Don't center upon yourself. It's not what do I get out of it, it's what can I do for you. This lady's faith was just like that. It was selfless. And while Paul would talk about that he was willing to be poured out as a drink offering, we remember drink offerings from the Old Testament, from the book of Leviticus. Paul says that I'm willing to be poured out as a drink offering for you. Shows his selflessness. And the passage then that we referred to this morning, Philippians chapter 3, where Paul talks about the things that were gained for him, those he counted loss for the excellency of Christ Jesus, my Lord. His was a selfless faith. Great faith is selfless. It's not about self. It's about others. But then her faith was great because it was active. As we said at the very beginning, we all have faith. We can't deny the fact that we have faith because we all have faith. That's the way God made us. Faith in and of itself is active. There is a thought in certain circles that faith is, simply put, that which we place in something or someone. Well, that's part of it. You know, the simple definition of faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. But when you get to studying faith a little deeper, as you all have, you find out that faith is, yes, placed in something, the Lord, but it is also that which you do. You can't go through the book of John and find out that faith is just something that you have. That what you find out in John's account of the gospel is that faith is active. It works. It does. It moves. It doesn't sit. It's moving. It's not static. It's kinetic. It's moving all the time. Why? Because it believes. And it has the understanding it's called by God to greater service. As the old adage goes, we're individuals as Christians that we're one to win and saved to serve. It's so true. When we think about that, we think about, or I do, maybe you don't, but I do. I think about those individuals in Hebrews chapter 11. And like I say, later on this year, we're going to take some time with each one on Sunday nights. And we're just going to ask you the question, do you have the faith of? When you look at Noah and Abraham and all of those individuals, one of the things that we're going to notice is that each one of them, by faith, did something. By faith, they acted. By faith, Noah. By faith, Abraham sojourned. By faith. Faith's active. It's not passive. This lady just didn't sit back and say, I bet Jesus would do something for my daughter. I'd go ask him. No. She didn't sit back and say, well, it might happen. She went out. As a church, we understand faith's active. And so faith is not confined to the four walls of this auditorium. It moves out of the auditorium into the worlds in which we live. Be exemplified to others, to be taught to others, to be shared with others, to be shown as we let our light shine before men. They'll see our good works. Now look at us. Glorify our Father which is in heaven. I don't know about you, but I always enjoy thinking about this woman and looking at her story, because what I find is a woman that has great faith. And I realize that as Paul told the church of Corinth, we walk by faith and not by sight. May we ever live a life that not only walks by faith and not by sight, but may we always live a life so that if the Lord were here standing in our audience, in our presence, he would say, great is your faith. So this evening, look at your life and see where you stand. And if you need to respond to the Lord's invitation, won't you come? All together we stand and sing.